My name is Elaine Murphy, and the first sign that my role in my son's life had quietly expired came wrapped in cream-colored cardstock with gold embossed lettering. It arrived on a Tuesday in March, slipped between a water bill and a grocery store circular. I opened it with casual indifference, expecting yet another real estate flyer. But the envelope felt expensive, thick, textured, deliberate. Mr. and Mrs. Jason Murphy request the honor of your presence. I had to read it twice before it registered. My son was getting married. And this was how I found out. No phone call. No lunch invitation. No heartfelt announcement. Just a formal, printed card like I was a distant relative they barely remembered but couldn't leave off the list. I stood in my kitchen, the invitation resting beside a stack of overdue bills. Jason was 28 now. He lived in a downtown high-rise condo with floor-to-ceiling windows and valet parking. I'd seen it once, briefly. He worked in tech and made more in a month than I did in 6 working insurance claims from a cubicle that smelled like old carpet. Barbara, his fiancée, was polished and poised. I'd met her only twice, once at brunch, once at Christmas. She looked around my apartment like she was afraid to touch anything, like poverty might rub off. The wedding was scheduled for June 15th at the Magnolia Hill Country Club. Black tie optional, it said in small print. I didn't own anything that qualified. My best dress was navy blue, 5 years old, and bought from the clearance rack for Jason's college graduation. Still, I held the card gently. My fingers traced the gold lettering, heart wavering between pride and rejection. I was invited, technically, but I had never felt more like a stranger in my son's life. That evening, I called Jason. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Hey, Mom," he said, voice distant, distracted like always. I imagined him scrolling through emails or finishing a text while I spoke. "I got the invitation," I said, trying to sound cheerful. "Oh, good," he replied, no warmth, just acknowledgement. "Congratulations, honey? Barbara seems lovely." A pause. "Yeah, she is. Listen about the wedding." "I'd love to help," I interrupted, already standing near my kitchen table with a pen in hand. "I know planning a wedding can be overwhelming. Maybe I can help with the flowers or tasting the cake." "Mom, stop." His tone was sharper now. "It's all taken care of. Barbara's parents are handling everything." "I wasn't talking about money, Jason. I meant being part of it. A mother-son dance. Helping you pick the boutonnieres. You know, being involved." "We've already picked all of that," he said, sighing. "Look, just show up. Okay? Wear something nice, but not, too conservative. Barbara's family is kind of traditional." "Something nice, but not to me." "I understand," I said, keeping my voice steady though the familiar ache was rising in my chest. "I wouldn't want to embarrass anyone." "It's not about embarrassment," he muttered, then added quickly, "Never mind. I've got to go. Barbara's making dinner." The call ended, leaving only the soft hum of my refrigerator and the silent weight of disappointment. I stared at the phone in my hand and then at the invitation still lying on the table. The words "black tie optional" gleamed under the kitchen light. Optional perhaps, but so was I. After that call, I made a decision. If I was going to be an outsider at my own son's wedding, I would still show up with my head held high. For the next 3 months, I saved every dollar I could. I skipped meals, walked to work instead of taking the bus, and canceled my cable subscription. I clipped coupons with precision, counted every penny, and said no to every small indulgence. By May, I had scraped together enough to buy a new dress. Not just any dress, one that made me feel like I belonged in a room full of country club members and designer labels. I chose a deep emerald green gown, simple but elegant, from a department store I'd never dared to enter before. It cost more than I'd spent on myself in years. I bought matching shoes, low heels, silver accents. I had my graying hair professionally styled for the first time in over a decade. The stylist added soft curls and subtle highlights, and when she turned me toward the mirror, I hardly recognized myself. For a moment, I let myself imagine the way Jason might look at me. Maybe there'd be a flicker of surprise. Maybe he'd tell me I looked beautiful. Maybe he'd introduce me to his in-laws with a glint of pride. That morning, standing in front of my bathroom mirror, I touched the neckline of my dress and breathed deeply. The woman staring back wasn't just someone's mother. She was dignified, present, whole. No matter what happened that day, I was going to walk into that wedding knowing I had done everything I could. Not for Jason. For me. Because sometimes dignity is the only gift you can still give yourself when others have forgotten your worth. The country club was exactly what I imagined: pristine grounds, manicured lawns, a shimmering lake in the distance. Luxury cars lined the circular drive, BMWs, Mercedes, even a few Teslas. I had washed my 15-year-old Honda Civic the day before, hoping it might blend in. It didn't. Inside, the lobby glowed with marble floors and crystal chandeliers. Guests mingled in designer dresses and tailored tuxedos, their laughter echoing off the vaulted ceilings. I walked slowly, my heels tapping against the polished floor, trying not to feel so terribly out of place. I spotted Jason near the staircase, resplendent in a black tuxedo. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his smile wide as he laughed at something Barbara's father had said. Barbara stood beside him, radiant in a gown that looked straight out of a bridal magazine. They looked like they belonged on a magazine cover. I approached, my heart a tight fist inside my chest. Jason's eyes found mine. His smile faltered not with warmth or recognition but with something that looked unsettlingly like dread. "Mom," he said, voice carefully neutral, "you made it." "You look so handsome," I said, reaching to straighten his bow tie like I had done 100 times when he was younger. He stepped back slightly, breaking the contact. "Thanks, you look nice." There was a pause before nice just long enough to sting. Barbara's father extended a hand. "You must be Jason's mother, Tom Whitmore." "Elaine Murphy," I said, shaking his hand. "Congratulations on gaining such a wonderful son-in-law." "Indeed," he replied, smiling politely before turning back to Jason. I stood there a moment longer, then quietly stepped away. Just like that, I faded into the background of my son's wedding. And no one seemed to notice. The reception hall was a masterpiece of understated luxury. White linens draped across round tables, crystal stemware sparkled under chandeliers, and towering floral arrangements filled the air with the scent of roses and eucalyptus. Each table had a name card. I found mine at table 8, tucked in the farthest corner of the room, right beside the swinging doors to the kitchen. The other guests at my table were strangers. An elderly woman with a hearing aid, a couple who looked nervous in their formal wear, and several empty chairs that would remain unfilled. We were clearly the afterthoughts. At the front of the room sat the head table, Jason and Barbara in the center, surrounded by her family. Table 1 held the Whitmores' closest friends. Table 2 was reserved for Jason's college buddies and their wives. Table 3, Barbara's sorority sisters. It was a diagram of proximity to importance. I sat down quietly and tried not to feel humiliated. A woman in her 60s approached, looking around uncertainly. "Are you Jason's mother?" she asked with a gentle smile. "I'm Margaret, Barbara's great aunt. Would you mind if I sat with you? I don't know anyone else here." "Of course," I said, relieved to see a friendly face. She sat beside me and leaned in. "All this is very beautiful, but not really my world. You know?" "I do," I said, smiling faintly. "But it's Jason's special day. That's what matters." As the cocktail hour dragged on, I watched Jason work the room like a seasoned politician. He shook hands, shared laughter, posed for photos, making time for everyone. Except me. I told myself he'd come over soon, that he was just caught up in the moment, that I was saving the best for last. But as each minute passed, a hollow feeling opened up inside me, slow and wide and familiar. The same old ache of being forgotten by the one person you loved the most. Dinner began with practiced elegance. Waiters in crisp uniforms moved like clockwork, serving the head table first, then working their way through the hierarchy of tables 1 through 7. At our table, we waited patiently. Margaret received her plate first, lukewarm, but edible. Then came the elderly woman's, followed by the nervous couple. And then nothing. A young server approached me flustered. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. There was a mix-up in the kitchen. Your meal will be out in just a few minutes." 20 minutes passed, then 30. Around us, the other guests were finishing their meals, raising glasses, and laughing at inside jokes. I sat quietly in front of an empty place setting, stomach growling, pride shrinking by the minute. Eventually, a different server brought my plate. The salmon was cold, the asparagus limp. The potatoes looked like they had been scraped off someone else's plate and left under a heat lamp. Margaret glanced at it and whispered, "That's inexcusable." But I smiled and said, "It's fine. I'm just happy to be here." That was a lie, but one I'd grown used to telling. I was halfway through the cold salmon when I heard Jason's voice echo across the room. He stood, preparing for his thank you speech. But before addressing the guests, he leaned toward Barbara, just loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Did you see? They finally brought my mom her food," he said with a smirk. "She's used to eating what life leaves behind. She won't mind." Barbara laughed high and brittle. A few others joined in, following her lead. I set down my fork. My hands were steady, though something inside me cracked wide open. Margaret looked horrified. "Did he just?" "I'm fine," I said again. But the words felt like ashes in my mouth. Because that joke was the truth. At least the truth of how he saw me. After dinner, the lights dimmed and the music swelled. Jason and Barbara stepped onto the dance floor for their first dance, gliding together like a picture-perfect couple in a movie scene. I watched from my corner, smiling politely, my hands folded in my lap. My dress, my hair, my shoes all chosen with care for a moment I thought would matter. Then came the parent dances. Barbara's father, Tom, twirled her with ease, his movements polished and proud. Barbara's mother took Jason's hand next, swaying with him slowly, sentimentally. I waited. Surely my son would come find me. Surely he hadn't forgotten. I'd imagined this moment so many times. I had even practiced a few steps in my small apartment, dancing slowly with no partner, letting the old music from my phone fill the silence. But as the evening wore on, more family joined in. Cousins, uncles, friends, all spinning and laughing under the golden lights. Jason never looked my way. No hand extended, no nod in my direction, no mother-son dance. He was too busy, too celebrated, too wrapped up in the life he had built, one where I existed only on the margins. And I finally understood. I wasn't invited to participate. I was only invited to witness, quietly, from the shadows. Margaret leaned over and whispered, "Are you all right, dear?" I looked at the laughter, the swirling gowns, the man who used to be my little boy, now dancing through a life that had no room for me. For the first time all evening, I felt entirely clear. "I'm perfect," I said. And for once, I meant it. I stood, smoothed my emerald dress one last time, and walked toward the exit. No one noticed me leave. Not Jason. Not Barbara. Not a single soul. Back home, the silence felt different, like something had finally settled. I hung my emerald dress in the back of the closet, changed into jeans and a t-shirt, then sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. And I began to write. Not in anger, not in grief, but with a clarity I had never known before. Jason, I'm writing this while your wedding is still fresh in my mind, though I suspect the parts I remember will be different from what you'll choose to keep. Your comment last night, about me being used to eating what life leaves behind, wasn't just cruel. It was honest. And that honesty gave me something I didn't expect: perspective. You're right, Jason. I have spent years accepting leftovers. Leftover time, leftover attention, leftover respect. I taught you without meaning to that it was acceptable to treat me as second best. I accepted scraps and called it love. But not anymore? Effective immediately, I'm ending all financial support. That includes the $500 monthly deposits you thought came from a trust fund. There is no trust fund. That was me working overtime, skipping meals, delaying my own life so you could build yours. I'm also canceling the credit card I opened in your name, which you've used for car repairs, flights, and vacations. And I am selling the house, the one you assumed would someday be yours. It's worth approximately $340,000 in today's market. I'll be using that money to travel, to rest, to live. You once asked why I never remarried. The truth is, I was too busy being your mother to be anything else. I poured everything I had into raising you, thinking someday you'd love me not just as a provider but as a person. I was wrong. This isn't a punishment. This isn't revenge. This is me finally choosing to matter to myself. I hope your marriage brings you joy. I hope one day you understand the difference between being loved and being respected. You'll always be my son. but I will no longer be your safety net. Mom. I read the email 3 times before hitting send at 3:47 a.m. No dramatic punctuation. No hidden messages, just the truth. By noon, Jason replied, "Mom, what the hell is this? Are you having some kind of breakdown? I think you misunderstood what happened at the wedding. It was just a joke. Everyone was laughing, not just at you. You're being way too sensitive. Can we talk like adults? Selling the house is insane. That's my inheritance you're talking about." Dad would roll over in his grave. "Barbara thinks you might be having some midlife crisis. She knows a therapist who specializes in women your age. Let's talk on Sunday. I'll come over." I didn't reply. By Friday, I had changed my phone number. Saturday brought a second email, shorter and sharper. "Mom, I've been calling for 2 days. Pick up your phone. We need to talk about this house before you do something stupid. I talked to a lawyer. You can't just cut me out of my inheritance. Call me back." I forwarded that one to my realtor with a short note. "Please expedite the listing process." By Tuesday morning, the house was on the market. By Thursday, we had 2 offers. I accepted the higher one, $15,000 over asking price, cash, 30-day close. Sunday came Jason's final message. "You win. Whatever point you're trying to make, congratulations. You've ruined our relationship and embarrassed me in front of Barbara's family. I hope it was worth it. Don't contact me again." I printed it and placed it in a folder labeled evidence, not for court, for memory. The closing was scheduled for July 20th. I put down deposits on a furnished apartment in Savannah and a month-long bed and breakfast in Vermont for the fall. For the first time in 30 years, I was making plans that didn't revolve around Jason's schedule, his needs, or his approval. The woman who raised him had done her job. And she was finally free to do something else. To live. Savannah was warm when I arrived, not just in temperature, but in spirit. I rented a small apartment 4 blocks from the river, on a quiet street where people still nodded hello. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I took a part-time job at a local bookstore owned by a woman named Rita, who hired me on the spot after our 10-minute conversation. "You seem like someone who understands that books are more than merchandise," she said. She was right. I spent my days surrounded by stories. I spent my evenings walking along the water, eating simple meals, reading on a second-hand porch swing I'd picked up at a yard sale. For 3 months, I didn't hear from Jason, not a call, not a letter, not a sign. Then, one Thursday afternoon in October, Rita handed me a note. "Some man called looking for you," she said he was your son. He sounded desperate. I folded the message and tucked it into my pocket. 2 days later, Jason showed up in person. He looked smaller, thinner, with dark circles under his eyes. His expensive shoes were scuffed. His voice cracked when he said my name. "Please," he whispered, "can we talk?" I told him I got off work at 6. The cafe next door closed at 7. He had 1 hour. That evening, I sat across from him as he stumbled through an apology, his words carefully chosen, rehearsed. "I miss you," he said. "I miss having a mother who believed in me." "I did believe in you," I answered, "but belief without boundaries isn't love. It's enablement." He asked how to fix it, how to start over. I told him he couldn't. Not because I hated him, but because I had already left. He just hadn't noticed until the benefits stopped. As I walked away from that cafe and into the soft Savannah night, I didn't look back. I had spent 30 years accepting leftovers. Now, I was building a life where I set the table. And this time I was choosing where I sat. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of the silent sacrifices so many make in the name of love, then let's talk about it. Have you ever given so much of yourself that there was nothing left for you? Elaine's journey wasn't about revenge and anger. It was about reclaiming dignity. About finally saying enough. If you believe in boundaries, in second chances for yourself, not for those who used you, then like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and leave a comment below. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge is simply choosing yourself.